Bonjour. Bonjour les amis. Bienvenue à Vannes. Welcome to Vannes in southern Brittany. I had ordered some sun for us today and we did get it this morning, but unfortunately it went hiding this afternoon. I was going to treat you to a sunset above this beautiful harbor, and now the sun's is playing hard to get. So bonjour. Welcome to Brittany. I know some of you have been here before. This is a very different setting from the last time when I left you last week in fact. We were in northern France in Lille. And here we are in western France. In fact, in the westernmost section of France, Brittany, la Bretagne in French. A very, very special part of France. In terms of its geographical location, it kind of stands apart from the rest of the country. In terms of its history, which is quite fascinating, its traditions, its language, there's a lot going on here. And this is a popular region with French people. In the summer, you would see a lot of French tourists here, not just in Vannes, but also in Brittany. Bonjour Alain et Jo. I am standing by the harbor, or the harbor, I guess it's a harbor. And this is where a local river, la Marle, M-A-R-L-E, arrives after crossing the city. And the harbor, if you follow it all the way, will take you to the beautiful Gulf of Morbihan. M-O-R-B-I-H-A-N. The Gulf of Morbihan means the little sea. It's not quite the ocean yet, but it's beautiful with about 60 islands, small and large, sailboats, fishing boats. And that's why this is such a popular area for tourism. Now, of course, this is January. This is also 2021. The sequel of 2020 as far as we're concerned here. Restaurants, cafes, hotels, museums, still closed. Very quiet town right now. Bonjour les amis. So if you follow the harbor all the way, eventually you would just walk into the Gulf of Morbihan. And there are two lovely walks on both sides of the harbor. So you can walk or bike here for several miles all the way to the water, which is wonderful if you like to walk and hike, as I do. I see there are over 140 of you here on a Thursday. That's not bad at all. I know that some of you are working. Maybe you're peeking at the screen discreetly while you're working. Well done. And I'm going to take you on a stroll today. Now, I was here in July of 2020. I spent 2 weeks here. I have relatives in the area. That's why I'm here. And I went all the way around, shared a lot of photos and videos and content. So after this, if you want to see more of Vannes and the beautiful Morbihan, I encourage you to head to my YouTube channel. If you look under replays, you will find the two live stream strolls I did here in Vannes. The one I'm doing today is going to be a little different, so you get to see different sections of town. And you will also find other videos as well. So how about I say a quick little hello, introduce myself. Véro. I'm wearing my face mask right now. I might take it off to say hello a little later. I am a France-based, Paris-based tour guide and a content creator. And my business, my job, which I love, is to share with you Paris and France. And I've been doing that non-stop since 2020. Every week, either in the French capital in Paris or around France. Just last week, as I mentioned, we were in northern France, in Lille, and today we are in western Brittany. It looks like international travel won't be resuming anytime soon, especially to Europe, so I thought you would all enjoy this. This was going to be a private stroll from my club members, the good people who support my business and help me create this free content like this stroll, but I decided that a lot of you might need a little bit of a, I don't know, pick me up, a little bit of cheering after recent events, so I decided to turn this into a public stroll. I hope you enjoy it, and if you're ready, I think we're going to get going. So, you can see a lot of traffic around me. You might be surprised. Vannes is not a huge city. It's about 55,000 people. But there is traffic now because it is rush hour, and in fact a lot of kids are coming out of school, and we have 2 private junior highs in the area, so a lot of those cars, some of these cars could be people picking up their kids. I've seen a few buses stop as well. In fact, the kids are still hanging out. They're still hanging out over there. You see them on the esplanade right next to the building, which is right there, which is the tourist office. So quite, some traffic. I've been here since Tuesday, taking care of some things I had to do around here, and this weekend I'll be staying with my cousins outside of Vannes, which I'm looking forward to, so I'll be taking a few days off, come off the air for a little while. I haven't had a real break for a while. I made friends with the owners of the lovely hotel across the street, the Hotel Océan, the Ocean Hotel, and L'Escale, the port of call, which is their restaurant. This business is a family business. It's been here for 50 years. If you come to Vannes, I encourage you to stay there and check them out. Right now, the hotel is open. The restaurant is closed, but these good people, the couple who owns it, Patrick and Nadine, they're very friendly. They basically have set up a little station where people can buy some vin chaud, some hot chocolate, some coffee as well. And they've recreated a little bit of a community feeling right outside their restaurant. If you look at those umbrellas, that's where it is right there. And I've been stopping by several times a day to chat with them. They're wonderful. So good for them. And trying to keep things going a little bit. We are looking here at one of the gates around Vannes. You may know that Vannes is a walled city, and there are 5 gates, or used to be 5 gates that you could use to enter the city. This one was one of the newest ones. I'm going to cross the street and show it to you, and then we will go inside the walls, or within the walls, intra-muros, like we did last time in July, but we will do it from a different gate. Okay? All right, so on we go. See the kids? Just came out of school. Need to wait our turn. There are a lot of cars here. And they're going pretty fast. So you see the gate in the background over there? That's La Porte Saint-Vincent, Saint Vincent Gate. And that's where I'm headed. Okay, I think I'm good now. Now, if you watch the other 2 strolls I put on YouTube that I did in July, they're a little bit more shaky or shakier because I was just holding my phone by hand. And things should be a little bit more stable for you today, even without the sun. So here is La Porte Saint-Vincent, one of the 5 gates that you could use way back when to enter into the city. This one is actually a little newer than most. It dates back to the 17th century, I believe, early 17th century. But what's interesting is below the statue of Saint Vincent, you have the coat of arms of Vannes. And the coat of arms of Vannes is an animal, an ermine, I think you call it in English. And we will see it better, you will see it better in a few minutes. But this is basically, oh, seagulls. You can tell the ocean isn't too far, huh? And so this is how you would have entered the city in medieval times, this walled city, except there would have been a drawbridge, which is gone now. So we're not going to use this. But if you come to Vannes, and once restaurants and cafes reopen, this is quite a nice area because you sit outside here for coffee or a glass of wine, and then you can just look at the harbor, and it's lovely. And the harbor reminds us of the history of Vannes, built around the sea and maritime trade. And this is what the wealth of the city came from, and not just Vannes, all of Brittany really. In the 17th and 18th century, there were privateers, you know, those official pirates working for the French kings. There were privateers leaving from some famous cities in Brittany, and one of them was Saint-Malo in northern Brittany. So here's one last peek at the harbor. So the sunset I was expecting should have been right there. Oh well, just picture the sunset, my friends. All right, so I thought for this walk, it would be nice to show you. I thought it would be nice to show you what it was like to live in a medieval city surrounded by walls. We may have a few connection issues in this section. I will walk fast to avoid them because we are walking through some pretty old stones, pretty thick, and cell signal gets iffy at times, but I tested it, we should be fine. If not, be patient, don't go anywhere because I'll keep filming no matter what. Remember our walk on the Champs-Élysées a few weeks ago? That was something else. All right. This is where you're going to understand how magnificent the city is in terms of the walls surrounding it. Vannes, like many cities in this part of France, was born over 2,000 years ago when the Romans arrived in the 1st century BC. And so the Romans built a first wall, like they did in Paris, like they did in many other cities we've been to. This was another one of the gates here. Vannes, around the 13th century, saw something interesting happen. A local dynasty, a local royal dynasty, grew really powerful and was pretty much ruled this region for the next 700 years until Brittany was officially reunited with France. And when that happened, it happened here in Vannes. And this is what the sign says here. On the 7th of August of 1532, the treaty linking the Duchy of Brittany to the Kingdom of France was signed in Vannes. Brittany kept an autonomous status, so quite a lot of autonomy, which is true, until the French Revolution in 1789. And that is very true. For almost 700 years, the Dukes of Brittany ruled from this area. And I'm going to show you the place where a lot of them lived. And eventually, the dynasty was linked to the crown of France, so the French crown, when the king, known as Francis I, you've heard his name if you went to the Loire Valley, he's the one who commissioned Chambord. The King of France married Claude, and Claude was the daughter of the last great political leader of the Dukes of Brittany. Her name was Anne of Brittany, and she was the only French queen who became the only woman in France who became queen twice. She married the first French king, Charles VIII, who died accidentally a few years later. She came back to Brittany to rule Brittany again, and then she married his cousin, his successor, Louis XII. But her daughter eventually married the King of France, Francis I, and he's the one who made sure that Brittany, once and for all, would be linked to the crown of France. But even then, it kept enjoying some very special privileges that no other regions enjoyed. So here we are in a beautiful part of town. We are standing, as you can tell, right outside the old walls. A big part of these walls were developed in the late 14th through early 15th century. Part of it was during the 100 Years' War with England. And I want you to picture, instead of this beautiful building, I want you to picture a medieval fortress that was added at that time. And this is where the Dukes of Brittany ruled, and later other local officials. Eventually, after the 16th century, the Dukes of Brittany's power disappeared. And this building was purchased by a wealthy man right before the French Revolution, and he built it. This is a private residence, hôtel particulier, right? So it's known as the Chateau de l'Hermine, the castle of the Ermine. It was named after him, but today, if you ask people, locals from Vannes, les Vannetais, what this place is called, they will still call it Le Chateau de l'Hermine, after the old fortress, which tells you how attached they are to the times when this powerful local dynasty ruled the region, the Dukes of Brittany. Here is the river that we mentioned in the harbor, and you can see it's called La Marle. And in this section, in fact, we had locks. We had locks regulating, the flow of the river that goes into the harbor, and I will show you why in a few minutes. So let's walk through here, and I'll show you more. First, we're going to stand outside the walls, and then we will go through one of the gates, and I will take you through a couple of streets to show you why Vannes is so beautiful and so renowned, even without the sun. So here is your Chateau de l'Hermine, the Ermine castle, built 20 years before the French Revolution. It belonged to one gentleman. It's actually quite massive. And the old medieval fortress is gone now. But the gardens are lovely. And they change the flowers and the plants every season. So you just see them changing. Here is something important here. Do you see this? This is the coat of arms I've mentioned above St. Vincent Gate. The coat of arms representing that animal, the symbols of the Duke of Brittany, which is the ermine with a coat flying behind it. This is exactly what you see on the coat of arms of the city. So let's keep walking. There's a little bit of an incline, but not too bad. Thank you for joining me today. If you're new, if you just popped in, my name is Véronique. My friends call me Véro. I am a French native and a Paris-based tour guide who takes viewers to her favorite corners of Paris and La Belle France. And that is what I've been doing since April of 2020, and well before that in social media. But now it's actually my job. That is what I do for a living. I mean, I see your comments saying it's beautiful, and it is. Even without the sun, you can see how magnificent it is. Now, we will talk about what those walls are made of a little later. There's a park across the street from us, which is quite pleasant, if you go to that side. Quite a lot of cars at this time, for sure. It was quieter today. So we are in the westernmost section of France right now, en Bretagne, in Brittany. I think he's going to go. I might want to wait. Voilà. Merci. All right, so look at this. This is the gate that we're going to go through in a minute. This is another section of the walls. Now, Vannes was lucky. About 80% of the walls around the city have been protected and restored. Just a few sections are missing, not many. So let's look at several things here, shall we? This is the Marle, the river. And this is a beautiful, beautiful washing houses. And or wash houses, I'm not sure what it's called. In French, it's called a lavoir, where you laver, you wash clothes. And this came up at the very beginning of the 18th century, when French kings returned during the restoration after the First Empire. So they built this so the women would be standing right below this roof made of slate. It's a historic monument of France, so it's been beautifully restored. They would wash the clothes, and then they would hang them to dry on stones that were right outside the walls where the old moat used to be. And the building is here, and you see some chimneys. Do you see the chimneys? That's because it was like a laundry room. So they actually worked inside and then they washed the laundry. So this was a pretty busy area, and you can tell it's been beautifully restored. So let's walk here just a little bit more to show you more of the walls. Again, those walls were improved in the 14th and 15th century, though the Romans, when they arrived in 1st century BC, after a few centuries, started building walls as well, like they did in Paris, like they did in Tours, where we've been together. Over there is a great neighborhood. It's called Saint-Patern, P-A-T-E-R-N. It's named after one of the founding saints of Brittany. And it is actually the oldest part of town. It sits outside the walls, but it is the oldest part of town. And if you go to YouTube to catch my second replay for Vannes in July, you will get to tour this neighborhood. It's a really fun stroll, so I advise you to go see it. There's a church there, a beautiful church, lively area, lots of restaurants and bars when they're open, of course. And this is the area where I'm staying. I have rented an apartment there for a few days. So this is Saint-Patern. And then here we are with the beautiful walls. Now this tower is what's left of the medieval fortress I mentioned earlier from the late 14th century. It is the tower of the Constable, that's the word. Constable in French. The tower of the Constable. So whoever led the armies for the Dukes of Brittany would be in that tower. And this is how they protected their city, of course. Isn't that beautiful? You can just feel the power behind those walls. Now, the gardens, interestingly, did not appear until the 1950s, but they are a big attraction in town. I bet he's an attraction in town too. Those gardens appeared late, and right now they're pretty barren. Of course, it's winter. But in the spring and summer, it is just magnificent. They put flowers everywhere. It's just gorgeous. So if you come at that time, you will certainly enjoy strolling through these gardens. It's like a park, a garden outside the walls. And this is, I think, a great spot to understand what Vannes is all about. Now, this is not the only walled city in France, but very few cities are, in very few cities are the walls as preserved as here. They are in very, very good shape. And the wash houses, les lavoirs. You can see some people sitting down there from the gardens, probably. It's been pretty cold. Locals have complained it's colder than usual. I think it's about 4 Celsius right now. So what is that, 37? But if you bundle up, if you do layers, it's fine. As long as it's not raining, and it's not supposed to rain this week. All right, how about we go inside the city? How about we go intra-muros, within the walls? What do you think? What do you think? Should we do that? How often do you get to go inside a medieval city, go through a medieval gate, and stroll through medieval streets? Well, if you live in Vannes, you can do it every day. So let's use one of these gates, shall we? Of course, picture it with a drawbridge. Looks very different now. Cars have to be able to get through. So I mentioned earlier about 55,000 people live in Vannes. This is a nice view of the buildings for the wash houses. It's a very dynamic, very lively city. In normal circumstances, which is not this year and not last year either, they have a lot of festivals. Culture is very much present here. It's not that they have a lot of museums. They don't have that many museums, but they have a lot of events throughout the year. It's like the city is asleep right now. Aha, car. Excusez-moi, monsieur. Merci. Beep. Ah, another Parisian. Here's the Tour du Constable again. The tower of the Constable, the one we saw from outside, that used to be part of the old medieval fortress. I love that you hear seagulls. So as you can see, all the places where you would have a drink, listen to some music, restaurants, everything closed. But I was happy to check out here this little section. It's called un jardin éphémère, a temporary garden, and it's basically art. So a local artist this summer set up this space, or local artists. You see those two locals, I think, or maybe tourists, wearing their sailor shirts and a face mask. And then there's a sign explaining what they wanted to do, what they tried to create. It's about love and how lasting love is. And then I'm sure when they opened this in the summer, the plants were beautiful and each plant had a meaning. But they've left it for the winter, which is lovely. And then behind it here, this beautiful building, this is the side of the old Chateau de l'Hermine, the castle that used to be or the private mansion, I should say, that used to be the medieval fortress. So it's pretty big. It goes around the block. This building on the right are les Halles, Halles. And if you've been following me for a while, you know that whenever I whenever I arrive in a new city, the first thing I do, or one of the first, is to check out the local markets. I like the outdoor markets, but they usually happen only twice a week. And les Halles, when a city is big enough to have les Halles, then you can go almost every day. And so I was there yesterday with a friend of mine who also happens to be a Rick Steves tour guide. Her name is Linda. She lives in this area. And we went shopping for lunch inside the market. And it's open every day except Monday, I believe, until about 1 p.m. And you have everything in there, all sorts of shops. But if you miss them, there is a darling little square right there that has, it's very small, but it has a lot of specialty shops. You have a butcher, a fishmonger, a boulanger, a wine shop, and all that. So just on that little square here. And just so you can figure out where you are now. Earlier we were standing outside the harbor, and I showed you St. Vincent Gate, and I told you it led inside the city. So if we had gone through that first gate I showed you, we would have walked up here. Okay, so this is really the center of town. This big square is known as la Place des Lices, Lices. And lice is a reference to the tournaments they used to have here in the Middle Ages. You can see the Christmas lights are not working, but they will be taking them down this week, but it must have looked magnificent. I heard even the harbor was beautiful. And I missed it by just a couple of days, sadly. Now, Vannes is not the capital of Brittany. A city named Rennes is Rennes. The best way to come to Vannes, in case you're wondering, is to hop on a TGV, high-speed train at la Gare Montparnasse in Paris. And then it will be a 2.5 train ride to Vannes, with one stop in Rennes, in the capital, where they will the train will basically split up. And 2.5 hours later, you arrive in Vannes, pretty close to the center of town. So the train, if you're not driving, would be the easiest way to come here. Brittany is a region that really would, I think you'd be better off driving if you explore it. There are a lot of small villages and sites that are off the beaten path outside cities. So it's a region best explored with a car, just so you know. So you can see some shops are still open. We have chocolates here. This is a popular cookie store, La Trinitaine, with regional specialties. And so regional specialties include everything with butter, like those galettes au beurre, you know, those cookies made with butter. So that's really popular. Here is a boulangerie-pâtisserie, La Huche au Pain, which will probably be selling the King's cake, because the Epiphany was yesterday, and through January a lot of French people will be eating the King's cake, which is that puff pastry filled with frangipane, that cream, that mix filling made with almonds and eggs. So this square gets extremely lively twice a week, like yesterday when I was here with my friend, because the market is here twice a week. So twice a week you would have the market outdoors here, and then you could go also to Les Halles over there, the covered market. If you go to the YouTube channel again, in the section called French Life, I did share a fun video of the Vannes outdoor market in July. So make sure to go check it out. French Life is the playlist on YouTube where I share a lot of food-related topics. See the beautiful architecture? We're going to see more of those half-timbered homes. Now, Vannes, we've seen those before, in Tours, for example. But Vannes has something a little different, is that they're very colorful. They come in many different colors. Okay, so are you ready to go in the heart, like in the medieval streets? We'll do a couple of these. Hope connection will be good here. We're leaving La Place des Lys, and we are going into this street before it gets too dark. And that street is called La Rue Bienheureux. And it mentions a priest who was a martyr and died in 1796. Brittany had a really hard time during the French Revolution years. Brittany was always fiercely Catholic and fiercely royalist, and they fought long and hard until against the revolutionary army. There was a lot of repression, a lot of executions, and quite a few uprisings. And this priest on the street plaque here, he's one of the priests who, like many, refused to renounce his faith, and the revolutionaries beheaded him. He wasn't the only one this happened to. This street, if you came in July or August, would be packed with tourists, up and down, up and down. So it's actually quite a blessing and an opportunity to see it like this. You are lucky, my friends, with or without the sun. You see the colors on those facades? Let me show you another one. This is one of the oldest houses in town. You see it's a Corbelled home. See all the different levels and how it sticks out in the street. And there's a fun structure here, sculpture I should say. Vannes et sa femme, Vannes and his wife. These two characters are carved out of granite, and that is not an easy thing to do. We will talk about granite again. Blue, you see a lot of blue in Brittany. A lot of the houses are painted in fun colors like this, blue, green, red, because very often in villages they would use leftover paint from painting the boats, and then they would use that to paint the shutters and the doors of houses, which is why they're so bright. Those are the colors of the ships, or the fishing boats, I should say. Look at this one. This is a cute little square called Place Valencia, where I filmed a video, a quick video, a vignette, the night I got here. I posted it on Facebook and on Instagram if you want to go back to it. And you could hear the bell of the cathedral nearby, which is right there. You see the cathedral? This is where we will end our walk. And if you go back and see that little video, you can hear the bells ring. So, Nautical Wear, of course, is a big deal. You had St. James here. That's a Normandy brand. Sits outside the Mont Saint-Michel. You have this one. And a lot of brands are made in Western France. in Nantes, the city of Nantes, etc. So it's getting dark now, but I think the phone is helping me out here a little bit to make it a little brighter for you. That's nice. Thank you, phone. Now, I don't know if you know this, but we have had a curfew, an 8 p.m. curfew for several weeks now. So at 8 p.m., the streets are positively empty. And there's a little bit of fog, and it's really interesting to be out at that time because literally nobody's around. I did that yesterday coming back from my cousins, and it was something else. Felt like I was in a movie, not in a good way. You see what I mean? But it's very safe. Here is a store that specializes in cider. And Brittany doesn't really produce a lot of wine. And cider is something you drink here. And some really fancy cider too. So if you like cider, hard cider that is, you would enjoy Brittany. And I'm sure you know what type of food they have with cider. The crepes and galettes. Crepes are the sweet version. Galettes are the savory version made with buckwheat or dark wheat. Look at that, it's so quiet. I love this sign for this restaurant. It's not old, but it looks like the type of signs you would see above shops and inns in the Middle Ages. This is the style of signs they would have, or so I heard. So quite a medieval street here. Buildings pretty close to each other across the street. Very compact type of architecture in the Middle Ages. And then all of a sudden you see something different. This is a former hôtel particulier. C'est pas grave. Non, c'est pas grave. He says I'm going to rush. Au revoir. Bon voyage. Oh, his suitcase is so loud. I can feel the pain because my suitcase does the same thing. It doesn't like cobble streets. That was funny. He says, I'm going to hurry. Je me dépêche. The Hôtel de Rosconvec, the sign tells us, was built at the end of the 17th century during Louis XIV's rule in the Sun King. And this is very different for this type of architecture because very different from what we just saw in the street where everything is really close by, close together. But this is a big mansion that this man built. And the expression we use in French is entre cour et jardin, between the courtyard and the garden. And you would see this in Paris and other elegant cities in Bordeaux and so forth. So what they would do is they would build the main residence, the Hôtel Particulier, and they would have, for total privacy, they would have a courtyard before they got into the street. And in the back, you would have a garden. So it was entre cour et jardin, and it became an expression. But this was the price for privacy, which of course the people living on this medieval street then and today probably don't get as much, right? Because everything is so close to each other. But the city of Vannes takes really good care of its old buildings, and you can see they've been working on this. I think they were working on it in July already. And it's big. I can tell it's a big place. I would love to see it when it reopens. So on the right is a big structure. It's called La Cohue, C-O-H-U-E. And in the Middle Ages, La Cohue was the name of a public building in a town on two floors. So on the first floor, first American floor, which is the ground floor, or rez-de-chaussée for the French, you would have all shops and merchants. And on the second floor, you would have the court of justice. So very unique concept. But today, La Cohue is the largest museum in town. It's the Museum of Fine Arts. It is very pretty inside, and they have some really interesting pieces. But guess what? La Cohue, like all museums and landmarks in France, has been closed for weeks. So if you come to Vannes, make sure you come to see La Cohue, and you would access it on the other side, actually. And this street here would be so different because it would be lined with restaurants and creperies, and there would be very little space for people walking up and down, which is why it gets really packed when the tourists are in town, because you'd have you know, restaurants kind of sprawling out. What is this? Souvenirs. That's quite typical of Brittany. Those big bowls with your name printed on them. Some are really cheap quality, but some are really good. In Quimper, you can find a place that makes original ones. They're beautiful. Absinthe. Well, there's a little bit of everything here. Not necessarily from Brittany. I'm grateful it's a little longer. Daylight stretches out a little bit more than in Paris here. Otherwise, we'd be in the dark already. So this is great. Le design de la table. So this is housewares. Everything is on sale, as you can see, even though the official sale season doesn't start right away. But a lot of stores are cheating by calling it solde privé, private events, and they send the news to their mailing list, and then people can come in and get some deals. Look at this one. Young locals enjoying a goûter, late afternoon snack. I'm not really reading your comments because my glasses are on the top of my head. You're used to this by now because they were all fogged up. So I'll read your comments later and reply if I have to. Now, Nautical Wear, as I was saying, is a big deal. This is one of my favorite brands from Western France. It's called Mas de Misaine, and their clothes are really fun. And they always have really nice collections. Look at this street. You see? So you do get this medieval atmosphere where it looks like buildings are almost going to touch at the top. And then once in a while you have a building that's probably been updated in the 19th century, or because that's totally different here. Yeah, it is like a movie set, isn't it? It's picture perfect. It's like, and it's so pristine. This is something you see a lot in Brittany. I was shocked when I was here in July after coming from Paris to see how clean Brittany was, and Vannes for a city. It's just, there's nothing on the ground. It's just immaculate. And I must say it's quite nice not to find anything, you know, no trash. And so more shopping. So some of them are chains, like everywhere else these days, in a different section of town especially. But here you have quite a few independent boutiques. And we are coming upon my favorite square in town, and there are many little squares here. If you watched my previous strolls in July, you've seen this one before, and you've seen it a lot livelier than it's going to be now. Mousqueton, another brand, local brand, very affordable prices for nautical wear. A lot more affordable than St. James, for example. And here we are on the quiet but beautiful Place Henri IV, a square named after a very popular French king once upon a time, Henry IV, the king who brought back religious peace after years of religious wars that killed so many people all over France. He is the one who put an end to religious wars, preaching for tolerance, so Catholics and Protestants could try and live side by side. Now in the summer, or in normal circumstances, this cafe at the corner over there, Le 4, number 4, all the tables will be sprawled out, and they have bright orange chairs. I loved coming here in July, but not anymore. And you can see the store here is liquidating. I've seen so many stores all over France with signs, you know, liquidation, and who knows how many will still be open at the end of this year. I don't think we've seen the full effect of what's happened recently yet. I think we will see that down the road. This house was under repair or being repaired in July, and I see it still is. I can see all the reinforcements, and quite an unusual Haussmannian looking building right here. That kind of sticks out, doesn't it? So we will be wrapping up in a few minutes by the cathedral, because I don't want to take you to the same places I took you to in July. But again, you can go back to the France with Véro YouTube channel and enjoy some of the content I have published there. Great chocolate place, Maison L'Arnicole, which is now a chain. Their stores are all over France. The sleepy 4, le 4, the 4, closed. Can't wait to come back. And I refer to these two houses as the kissing houses because it looks like they're kissing at the top. That's not a great name for them, but that's the one I like. It's like they're leaning towards each other. And here is our local cathedral, St. Peter's. Very interesting cathedral. Took centuries to build, from the 13th century, and they were still working on it in the 19th century. As a result, you have so many styles. Like, look at this interesting towers. This is the style of the Italian Renaissance from the 16th century, and it's very unusual to see this in Brittany. And then you have the clock tower, which is probably the oldest part of the church, more of a Romanesque style. And then you have elements of the Gothic, of course, all the different time periods of the Gothic architecture. But realize that this cathedral is built with granite. Oh, and look, before we go on about the cathedral, we are standing right below medieval homes. How often do you get to do that? Right there. Look at that. And you can see the quality. I mean, they're all protected, in case you're wondering. They're protected. They're historic monument of France. Look at the wood. Very good shape. So back to St. Peter's Cathedral. If you come here, make sure you go inside. A lot to look at. And realize this is made of granite. And you might think, when you travel through Brittany, you might think that the cathedrals are not as high or as impressive, as ornate as some of the cathedrals you will see in other regions in France. Well, that's because they worked with granite. And granite is notoriously hard to carve. It's a very hard stone. So they might look a little bit more, I wouldn't say somber. I mean, this is beautiful, isn't it? So again, if you go back to Facebook or YouTube, a couple of days ago, I shared this video of the bells, the Angelus bells, calling the faithful for the service at 7 p.m. And the same thing will happen tonight. But you can really see the granite here on the walls. I'll step back so you can take a look at it. More half-timbered homes, kind of a variety here, a little bit of everything. And shops. The bookstore is open. La librairie. Les petites pompes. Now that's a cute name. Les pompes in French slang or conversational French refers to shoes. The little pumps are shoes. So here are mes petites pompes, so shoes for children. I would assume, or for people with very small feet, maybe. Yeah, probably people with small feet. This is a different time period, more 19th century. You can recognize the style, the railings. And let's look at the cathedral from here. We shall enjoy it. It's beautiful. Merci. You know, another thing is people are very polite here. From shopkeepers to people walking around, very friendly, very polite. That's nice. Cathedral St. Peter's. St. Peter's Cathedral. And it keeps going on the side, of course. So when I live streamed in July, the second live stream, actually both of them started on the little square at the end of the street. and one came around here. It was very short and unplanned, so it was my favorite was the second one that takes you down that street and outside the walls into that neighborhood where I'm staying now, St. Patern. So make sure to go back and watch them. You might enjoy those, though I was holding my phone and it'll be a little shakier. So, voilà mes amis. What time is it? Let me check. Ah yeah, we've been going for a while. We always do. Okay, so I'm going to take this off for a few seconds, just so you can see my face. And I'd like to say, first of all, Happy New Year, or at least a better year than we had last year, though it's off to a sluggish start, I've got to say, around the world, including in France. But I hope that things will improve quickly. And I hope you can join me again. I publish every day on social media, Facebook, Instagram, on YouTube. You understood that by now. And my new job is to share my love of Paris and France with you as I travel around France. And I'm going to keep doing that because, like I said, I don't think international travel is going to resume anytime soon. And I know a lot of you appreciate that. If you want to help, you could consider joining the France with Véro club. I have almost 450 club members, and they really help me run this business and share all this content for the cost of a glass of wine a month. So look me up on Patreon, patreon.com/FrenchGirlInSeattle. And as soon as I come off the air, all of that information will be in the video notes. And I hope you enjoyed this guided tour with this tour guide. I have a virtual tip jar, and if you are so inclined, look me up on PayPal or Venmo. Same thing, that information is in the video notes, and tips are gratefully accepted. So thank you very much for being here, my friends. This was a really good turnout for a weekday. I'm happy you could make it, and if not, you'll be watching this as a replay. So I'm going to be enjoying a few more days in Brittany with my cousins. I'm going to be off the air for a little while and just enjoy some downtime. But I will be capturing photos and videos for club members, and they will be enjoying them probably by next week. So Happy New Year. Thank you for being here today. À bientôt.